One of my favorite people in all of human history said that freedom is never more than one generation away from being lost. And that, of course, was said by Ronald Reagan, the now second greatest president that we've ever had. And like all other Reaganisms, he's completely correct. And I think yesterday the Supreme Court, well, not really the court, more specifically Justice Ketanji Brown, proves that this is a very, very real concern. And a lot of people might not be aware that right now the Supreme Court is considering arguments on what is probably the biggest free speech case of all time. But Trump's not involved, and the media is just too busy dissecting the words bloodbath in new and creative ways to even talk about their own freedoms of speech, which of course is alarming. I mean, this should be front page news everywhere, but I know that you guys are aware, but the argument basically is that the government going to social media companies and even politely asking them to censor speech about anything, and anything includes public health, elections, shady laptops full of amateur porn and professional crimes. I mean, that is everything. I mean, the argument is that that is indeed the government infringing on First Amendment rights of its citizens. But now Ketanji Brown appears to have an interesting interpretation of the entire point of the First Amendment. See if it jumps out at you.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. What would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. So can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that, because you've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective, and you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems.
So basically, she says, in this case, it seems like the First Amendment is getting in the way of the government's ability to police speech. And look, man, I get it. Being a Supreme Court justice is tough. It does not look easy. And the Constitution, it's written in some pretty fancy old-timey language. And I get it. It's tough. I understand that it's essentially her job to tell us what all that gobbledygook in the Constitution actually means. But I feel like any one of us in this particular case could help her understand that that is the one and only point of the entire First Amendment, to protect our speech from the government. I mean, this is not a good look for Harvard Law, where she went. And I want to remind you guys of just a couple things. Elections do indeed have consequences. She is only on that court because Mitt Romney was the worst presidential candidate in the history of presidential politics. And another thing I want to remind you, as much as I loathe and despise Mitch McConnell, guys, if it was not for him, Merrick Garland would be on that court as well. Elections have consequences, man, and there might be nothing more important that a president does than Supreme Court appointments. Joe Biden cannot be allowed to ever leave his mark on the Supreme Court. But that's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.